Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution gives an enumerated monetary power to Congress. And I quote, to coin money, there it is up on the, oh, look at that. It looks like it was just written yesterday. To coin money, regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures. That is part of the U.S. Constitution. So that means Congress, have delegated that power to the Federal Reserve. But unfortunately, under helicopter Ben Bernanke, the Federal Reserve has done one hell of a bad job keeping the value of our currency. So why shouldn't Congress's investigative arm, the GAO, have a closer look at excess money creation and lending? And don't we need to know who the Fed is giving all that money to, especially the loans? Stop the secrecy. Inform the public. How about a Ben Bernanke press conference after each FOMC meeting, just like the Europeans do with Jean-Claude Trichet? All right, let's take the veil of secrecy out of the monetary temple. Joining us now, we have Vince Reinhardt, who himself was the monetary temple. Now he's a resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, but he was former director of the Federal Reserve's Division of Monetary Affairs. And once again, back for more, Steve Moore, the Wall Street Journal editorial board. Vince, the GAO won't release the study for 6 months, but I see no reason at all why we can't have less secrecy and more transparency and openness about what the Fed does and what their thinking is.
No doubt about it, Larry. But you have to appreciate that the Fed has been doing conventional monetary policy and unconventional monetary policy. The historical carve-out that shrouds in secrecy from the GAO Fed policy has been about conventional policy. But they've been doing unconventional policy, which is basically fiscal actions, exposing the taxpayer to risk. There's no reason that GAO shouldn't be able to go in and look at that.
All right, so now why is the Fed, you spent so many years in there, you know them institutionally and bureaucratically. They are apparently up in arms. They're going nuts over this. Why are they going nuts over this? I mean, they're trying to say they're going to lose their independence. I don't see they're going to lose their independence. They're just going to have more of a watchdog. What the hell's wrong with that? It's in the Constitution, Vince.
Delegated authority in the Constitution. I've looked at that too, Larry. 3 reasons. Number one, they're going to give you the slippery slope argument. That is, it's going to make it easier for any congressman to sick the GAO on monetary policy decisions, and it basically lowers the hurdle for criticism, so they worry about that. Number 2, they're going to be worried about what the GAO actually will ask for, information that previously has been protected for 5 years, like the staff forecast and transcripts. Number 3, basically, right now, there are 2 things in play. There's the House legislation in terms of financial reform and the Senate legislation. The Fed's best friend is Barney Frank, because the House bill is pretty limited as to what it would do to the Fed. If Barney Frank lets his colleagues go and allows this, the Ron Paul amendment to go forward, it means the Fed's best friend isn't really looking after its back.
Well, that's right. I mean, look, let's see. Ron Paul in the House, Senator Jim DeMint in the Senate, Steve Moore, 2 guys who believe in economic freedom. 2 guys who believe in stable money, okay, stable money, with the dollar in decline, in demise, with people all over the world talking about the end of the dollar as the world's reserve currency, with gold having another great week and rallying up just about to $1,150, Steve Moore. I ask you, what is wrong with Congress using its constitutional authority to stabilize the value of the currency, at least in this minor way?
And nothing is wrong with that. In fact, you know that old Fifth Dimension song, "Let the Sun Shine In." I'm all for it. I'm pretty much a big populist on this issue, Larry. I mean, it reminds me of that debate, remember, that happened 10 or 20 years ago about letting cameras into the halls of Congress and the congressional hearings. Now, we all agree that that was the right thing to do, but remember, Congress said, oh, we can't have that. We can't have the American people seeing what we're doing. We are talking about the 4th branch of government. And by the way, I want to thank you, Larry, for reading from the Constitution. I wish you'd do that every day on your show, because it's so important. It's a great civics lesson.
I just may.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a great stuff. But here's the point.
After I get through reading the health care bill on the air, I'm going to then read the Constitution on the air.
Well, I hate to tell you because the Constitution's 17 pages and the health care bill is 2,000 pages. But here's the point. Why not allow the American people to see? And I believe, by the way, that this would be stabilizing for the economy because when you have all this guessing about what the Fed is going to do and what their minutes were and what direction they're going in, I think that leads to more instability in monetary policy.
See, Vince Reinhart, all right. It could improve the performance of the Fed because we'll know more about, you mentioned it, Steve mentioned it, about their internal forecast. I don't think the Fed has had a great decade with their internal forecasting, and I fear, by the way, that the inflation rate is creeping up at a faster pace. I don't think you agree with me on that, but that's my fear, and the Fed may blow it again. They may be creating a mini bubble again, but whatever. What about the loans? Main Street is worried. I mean, populists are out there. The Fed is giving this money away hand over fist, and Vince, the reality is we don't know who's getting the money. We don't know how much the money is. We don't know how much what the terms of that money is. That's besides the fact that they're pumping up their balance sheet. In other words, why shouldn't the public know? And why should the Fed try to hide behind this veil of secrecy?
No, you're absolutely right on that score, Larry. The Fed shouldn't hide behind a veil of secrecy when it comes to fiscal policy. When you're lending to private entities, when you're taking on credit risk, you're exposing the taxpayer to risk. Therefore, you should face a higher level of scrutiny.
So that's your key point. Let me just dwell on this. You're saying this is extremely unusual, and in fact, they are not just conducting money creation and monetary policy. It's fiscal policy by making these loans. These are fiscal functions, Vince, and that should be just part. We should have like a fedrecovery.org website to know exactly where the stimulus money is going, Vince. That's really what we need.
But Larry, it has to have accurate numbers now. Unlike recovery.org, it needs to.
You know, if the Fed makes a loan to somebody in the 15th Congressional District of Arizona and they learn there is no 15th Congressional District, that would be wrong. But, Vince, I'm fascinated with your point. As an ex-Fed guy, you are sympathetic to this Ron Paul, Jim DeMint bill.
With regard to fiscal policy actions, you take credit risk, you should face a higher level of scrutiny.
Now,
let me just say, Steve probably hasn't been watching C-SPAN at 2 in the morning. TV cameras have their limits. And in my experience, the more scrutiny was on monetary policy at the FOMC meetings, the more stuff got done on the sidelines in the hallways. I do worry about that, well, that's a downside to openness.
All right, I hear you, but I'm not sure
there is no downside to openness.
You know, right. Steve Moore, what about Jean-Claude Trichet of the European Fed, the Euro Central Bank? He has a news conference after every meeting, and he takes questions from all these whacked-out, long-haired European reporters. Why shouldn't Ben Bernanke face the press, too? Why not?
He should, too. I agree.
All right,
press
Steve
conference
Moore,
would be a good thing.
I want a Fed press conference with all the reporters, including us. Real fast, Steve.
Yeah, but I'm hardcore than that. I do want those cameras in the room so we know how they're making their decisions, and especially because what the Fed has become over the last year, I think tragically, is a commercial bank.
All right.
It's buying up assets and selling them. It's bad news.
Fed press conference coming right up. Vince Reinhart, thank you. Steve Moore, thank you. Let's see how this bill